Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Pacific Angler Friday Fishing Report. We're filming for September 16th, so if it's nowhere near September 16th, click up here. This is a link to all the Friday Fishing Reports. We do it most weeks, so I should have something more up to date for you. What a week. It's been crazy. Two things have totally changed. Two things haven't. We'll go over that in a sec, but the two things that have changed is I finally got to the point 2 weeks ago in being comfortable saying that we wouldn't have a sockeye opening. Then we had a sockeye opening. The one thing that hasn't changed, we're still scratching our heads on how DFO made some of these decisions on managing the recreational sector, because they opened a couple areas that made no sense at all because it's very hard to fish for sockeye in those areas of the Fraser River. They opened the upper river, which is a great thing, but they didn't open the saltwater side of things, and it had us scratching our heads. The good news is, however, they have now opened the sockeye in the saltwater, which is something I didn't expect either, but we literally just got off the meeting 2 hours ago. As of Wednesday night when I'm filming right now, we are going to get an opening tomorrow morning, and that means we can get out sockeye fish. Now, for many of you, you might say, wait, it's way too late to go sockeye fishing. The good news is the one prediction that I did get correct was it does look like many of these runs are legitimately late. When we've looked at the Albion numbers on Chinook, their numbers are really good for September over historicals, and it looks as though the sockeye are the same. The reports I've been hearing is there are lots of sockeye still in the saltwater area, and that's a good thing for both the freshwater folks and the saltwater folks, because the freshwater folks got open first, but had some pretty tough fishing in the first couple of days. Now, the silver lining there is it's probably because the seining, the commercial guys, also got an opening a couple of days prior to that freshwater opening and cleaned up a bunch of the fish. More fish are coming, and we're expecting this weekend and into next to be pretty darn good fishing if you get out there, if you know what you're doing, whether it comes to fishing the Fraser or fishing at the mouth in the saltwater. So we're gonna go over all the sockeye stuff. We're gonna look at how to fish for them in the saltwater. Eric's got another draft how to fish diagram for us that we totally put on the back burner because we didn't think it was gonna happen, but I'm gonna dust it off. We'll take a peek at that if you guys want to know how to do that, because I really think if you get out in the next 10 days, it is going to be good. After that, we're not sure. It is obviously late in the season. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the scratching our heads on the DFO decision-making process. Now, it's very complicated. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but I do want to highlight the PFA is doing an auction right now. Now, who is the PFA? It's the Public Fisheries Alliance. These are the guys and girls putting in a bunch of work behind the scenes to make sure that issues that don't make sense, that don't jive with the reality of either science or the fisheries, is brought to the attention of the politicians making the big decisions. Now, SFAB and a bunch of other folks are doing great work right in the trenches, but Public Fishery Alliance are the ones that are going to look at it on a much broader level and really need our support if you love your public fisheries. Doesn't matter if you're a saltwater angler, freshwater angler on the Fraser, or an interior lake angler, they are going to bring the concerns to the politicians that we've all been scratching our heads at over the last few years. I'll leave links down in the description. I'm going to show you guys some of the auction items because there's some cool stuff in there to bid on. Also, I do want to look at the Vedder River. There's a lot going on this week, and the Vedder River's been fishing pretty darn good in the last handful of days. Seems like the major wave of Chinook showed up on the weekend, even though last week was a little bit more challenging. We're going to look at that in relation to the Albion numbers, and we're also going to talk about just Chinook fishing in general when it comes to saltwater, because it continues to be great. We're starting to hear reports of fish at the Catmouth, at the Bellboy, down towards T10, so it is go time. If you've got a weekend you can get away, I think this is a good one to do it. Lastly, we will talk a little bit about the fisheries I don't recommend going to right now because they're still too early. That's going to be the Squamish, the Harrison, the Stave, and to an extent the sloughs around the Fraser. Now, I said it was a big weekend when it came to fisheries, but it's also a big weekend when it comes to the store. We've got a sale this weekend. It's mildly entertaining that they happen to open sockeye fishing the day before our sale. It's going to be busy, but this is a great time if you want to get down and get that sockeye rig, that flasher setup that we have. If you want to get down and get some float fishing gear, if you want to gear up for the upcoming Squamish season, Harrison season, or heck, you're an interior lake guy, PS, the lake fishing starting to get really good right now. That's well worth looking at. Then everything in the store is on sale this weekend. I've got some highlights I want to show you all because there's some great deals to be had, and it's rare that in-season savings like this is going to happen. finally on a cool product, and this is probably one of the only things in our store that's not going to be on sale this weekend, is Islander has released these epic looking reels. I haven't seen a cool color like this. It's called magenta. It's like a deep dark pink. I really think it's cool. If you guys wanted a limited edition MR3, we've got limited stock, and this would be a good weekend to pick one up because I think they're going to fly off the shelves. All right, enough product and sales talk. If you guys want to see more fishing reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. All right, burning the midnight oil here because obviously we're getting ready for a sale, but I had to bring you guys and girls a report because wow, crazy stuff going on in the way of changes in regulations, in fish coming late, which I will give it to DFO and the scientists trying to make predictions. They've made it challenging this year, but to an extent challenging in a good way, meaning that fish are coming when we didn't expect them to come, and I'll take that any day of the week. So I want to start off by talking about that, talking about where we're coming from on the Albion numbers, because they're interesting. If you guys don't know, Albion numbers are a test fishery done at the Albion area in the Fraser River. I have more details on that. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the background on the test. But when we pull up what's happening right now, that's last year, that's this year, yeah, here we go. So right now in the month of September, and I said this in the last report, I think it was like the last day in August, our last report, but I expected or hoped for more fish to come, and more fish have come. Chinooker at a number of 188 fish through the test fishery from September 1 to September 14. And to put that in perspective, last year, same time period, 49 fish were caught, meaning it was the back end of the tail run. If you guys and girls remember the salmon fishing at the end of the season last year, when we could finally fish on the September 1 opening, was pretty darn poor. It was a challenge. It wasn't very good, but the reports I'm hearing continue to be good, and I continue to think they will be good for at least this weekend, if not a little farther into September, which is awesome. We also look at how that correlates off sockeye numbers, and the reports I've been hearing are that there are a ton of fish out there. Now, the commercial fleet hit them really hard, and that is their right. They haven't had a chance to fish for these fish either, and did a darn good job of soaking all of them up from, I want to say, last Thursday after that big storm right into the weekend. And I hate to say this for those that did get out bottom bouncing on the first opening day, the reports were pretty darn poor. Of course, we heard guys who really knew what they were doing, limiting out no problem, but there were a lot of folks and a lot of bars that had like one fish on them, two fish on them, and we think that is not because the run is over. We think it has to do with that commercial fishery sucking up that massive fish. Now, the good news is that commercial fishery is tapering down and there's more fish coming. I was talking to some of my guides and guides that have lived through huge sockeye years, and they're saying it's paved with sockeye out there. And what I've been hearing from the folks that were in the DFO meetings is there's 800 to 1 million fish still out there that are coming. And so that means two things. If you want to get out bottom bouncing, it is actually going to be worth it this weekend, I think, if those fish can get through the nets. And if you can get out saltwater fishing, the season guides are predicting that it will be on for at least 5 to 10 days. Now, they might be having some wishful thinking, but I trust their opinions. These are hundreds of years of saltwater experience sort of sitting in one room. And from their feel when they're out Chinook fishing and they're hooking sockeye on anchovies, and just so you guys know, sockeye don't like anchovies. So if you hook a sockeye on an anchovy, you could probably hook 10 using a more specific sockeye rig. We're going to talk about that in a second, but just wanted to give you guys and girls the overview. So how to fish for sockeye? Well, it's a little bit different, and I've had folks come in, they're like, well, I got a sockeye flasher. The guy said it was good for sockeye. It might have been the right color for sockeye, but it's how we fish that's really critical. We prefer blue flashers, just so you know why, because sockeye kind of have a blue color, but red ones are very popular, and there's lots of great anglers that do really well on red, and I've heard purple as well, and heck, I've seen a bunch of guys throw down any flasher they got in the bin and limit out pretty easily when things are hot. The key is having a lot of flashers down. So what do? Well, we run dummies. We're going to build dummies for you in the store if you want to come in and see it. But basically, it's a salmon snap. It is 60 to 80 pound mono, then straight to a flasher about 6 feet, 5.5 feet long. You're going to stack these at just far enough apart so they can't double over when you drop them down. A tighter stack is good, but obviously if you put them too close together, they are going to tangle up and cause one hell of a mess. I tell people to start with 2, but some of the guides are running as many as 4, plus a rod that's a little bit farther back with the same colored flasher, and then running a hoochie, a pink hoochie called a squirt off the back. And our favorites are the ones with the glow head and the pink tail. Everyone has their preference, but it's how we rig them that's really important. And you have to make sure that the Siwash hook in it can move freely. We've made mistakes on this in the past season where our Siwash is jammed too far up into the hoochie and it's a little more static. This year we've got some cool ones where we built it so they really spin and run free, because those sockeye don't fight very hard. I'm not going to lie, we call them socks for a reason. They're kind of like wet socks when you get them on. They, however, are very challenging to land because they have soft mouths, and it tends to come in waves, meaning all 4 rods can go off at once. And so you have to manage the deck really well to be careful to bring them in quickly to net them and then get them off. And if the hook isn't set right, it is going to fall out. So come to the store. We have these hoochies in stock right now. They will run out, but we'll show you how to build them if that should happen. And heck, it's all going to be on sale this weekend, so it's a good weekend to do it. Okay, that's the basic sockeye rig. Oh, and troll slower than you're used to. We tend to just move fast enough to get these flashers kicking, and that's your sweet spot. And the depths range from sort of 40 to 80 feet. You're going to look at your sounder, you're going to see massive balls. That's not bait balls, that's actually sockeye. And you're going to slowly move through them. And when it goes off, it can be really fun and obviously really tasty. So that's the sockeye fishing in the ocean. In a river, you guys know the drill with bottom bouncing. I'm not going to go over it. Come into the store if you're new to it. We will teach you. It is not a fishery that we believe should be promoted on other systems at all, because it's very specific to the Fraser, above Mission Bridge to the Hope area. And come down, we can talk you through it and get you out there. I do think that's worth it this weekend as well, just from what we're seeing in these Albion numbers, as well as the reports on the water out in the ocean. Okay, what else do I have for you all today? Well, let's talk about the Vedder, because we're starting to hear good reports there. Now, things were a challenge earlier because the water was very low and the fish were stacked up down below and getting a little bit stale. The reports I heard were it was slow Friday, Saturday, and then either Saturday or Sunday, boom, they all arrived and the fishing was on. I have heard fish spread throughout the river, even though the river is low. Now, as river anglers, we got to start looking at the weather, and I'm going to pull that up next because I think there's good news, at least from what I looked at earlier. I haven't checked it in a while. Let's pull up the 14-day here. Detailed report. Come on, load. And it looks like we might see 5 to 10 millimeters in Vancouver, or is this Chilliwack? No, this is Vancouver. Let's be a little more specific. Let's take a look at Chilliwack. There it is. And what do we got? Come on, rain. We're crossing our fingers for rain. So it is Friday, 5 millimeters. I'd like to see more than that. We need to see some more rain to get those fish moving and bump river levels up. But watch river levels. If we see a little bit of spike, I think it's going to be really good. And it has been good for the last handful of days, because those Chinook are starting to show up in good numbers. And from what we're seeing out in the saltwater, I think this is going to translate into the expected strong late white Chinook season on the Vedder from that brood year where they increased the hatchery production substantially. Okay, so that's that guy. Now let's talk a touch about Squamish. I'm just going to pull up Squamish weather to show you all what to look at. The key with the Squamish is it runs pretty dirty this time of year, and that's from snowmelt. And so the guys that I know that really focus on it will try to fish it as early as possible that the water clears up. And the trick there is to look at nighttime temperatures. And so that's why we're nowhere close to really going hard on the Squamish yet, because as you guys can see, we're still in 20s this weekend with nighttime temperatures getting maybe into single digits, but not low single digits. I watch this carefully, and my joke is when I walk out to the car in the morning and I see some frost on it, it can happen this time of year, but it's usually more so the end of September, early October. Then it's time to start looking at the Squamish, as well as any other major river system that is heavily affected by glacial runoff. That frost is going to suck up those glaciers, the water goes clear, those fish are already in the system, just hard to catch in the dirty water, and they get really bitey. So keep an eye on that. It's not time to go to the Squamish. It's still not time to go to the Harrison, even though Harrison's a little different different than this. They're soon, but not quite there. And we haven't heard any reports off the sloughs or the stave yet. But if you guys have a report, send it in. I'd be curious. We start looking now, but we got a ways to go. Okay, what else do I have for you? Well, lake fishing's been good. Sterling came back into the shop, the bugger. If you guys didn't know, Sterling's leaving to go guiding in New Zealand, and he's taking 3 weeks to go fishing BC before he pieces out. Came in, showed me a bunch of awesome lake fishing pictures. It's go time for the lakes. It was warm this weekend, but got cool. And Jay was out. A couple of the guys were out in interior lakes. And the second thing started to get cool, the fishing was on. Watch your weather. If things are cold, it's go time. If things stay warm, it may not be a good day, but you're fishing lots of leeches, lots of boatmen, shrimp, that kind of thing. But funnily enough, there were even still some chironomid hatches on the lakes that a few of the boys were at over this weekend, and really nice extended chironomid hatches that went late into the evening. So make sure if you want to go lake fishing, don't forget about it. This is one of my favorite times of year to get out lake fishing. All right, last but not least, I want to show some of the cool stuff you can win at the PFA auction. Please tune in with these guys and girls. They're working their butts off. Make sure stuff that doesn't quite make sense coming out of DFO or coming out of the politicians is brought to light, because it's very common that us as fishermen just forget about the mistakes that are made and move on to the next thing. Why? Because fishing's not maybe as important as the economy or as inflation or wars around the world. But if we can stop forgetting the mistakes that were made in the past and hold people to account, we're hoping for change. And PFA are the ones I want you to support. So check this auction out. Some really cool stuff. I'm going to put a few of the highlights up here that you might consider. And that's everything I've got for you this week. As always, you want to see more fishing reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to catch you in 2 weeks.